Gaming here, and today talking about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And this is basically my review for it, and there's a lot I want to discuss, but overall I did really like this game, and there's a lot I want to discuss that goes into that, but I really liked what they did here with the game, and the characters are very interesting, they're very well done, and I really liked what they did here with them. Cal is a great protagonist. I think that they did such a great job exploring this character. He's very sympathetic, and I really liked that because really, like, when it comes down to it, like, it's a very rare thing that you have characters that are just straight up just like pure of heart good people. It's really interesting to see Cal be like that because there are some moments that are very well done, and I really liked what they did here with his character. And some other characters I did really like were Seer and Grease and the second sister, which all of them have a lot of depth. At first, I wasn't that huge on Seer and Grease as the crew members because when you first get introduced to them, like, Grease was just kind of this, like, he was kind of this humor like thing. He was just there for like comedy's sake, and that kind of got on my nerves. But then over time, I actually really did like his character. Mainly at like one certain point in the game, they actually do make you really care for him. And yeah, same goes for Seer. I did not like her character at first, but over time, I actually did start to really like her character. They did something very interesting with her. I liked the backstory, and over time, I did like get invested in her character, but it did take some time, and that's kind of a problem where I was at with that. But overall, I did really like the characters in here. It just takes some time, or it just took some time for me to kind of get interested in them. But yeah, the second sister also, her character has a lot of depth, and I really liked what they did there with her because it was really well done and really well written the way her character was, and I really liked that. Although, it's just that some of the other characters, like with her, she was kind of weak at first, but then they do something, and it's like, oh, okay, there is a lot more depth to her, and it just takes some time to get used to that. And I am really glad that her character was that interesting because, yeah, at first, like, I thought she would just be kind of like, oh, she's this big bad villain and all of that, but there is a lot more depth to her. I'm not going to spoil it, but I really did like what they did with the characters here. They all feel really fleshed out, and like there are also some like really cool appearances in there, like Saw Gerrera and stuff like that. He appears in the game. Not a spoiler because it's in like the gameplay and all that. It's not a spoiler at all, so really it's fine. But I really did like there's also another appearance in there. I'm not going to spoil that, don't worry, but oh my god, was that awesome towards the ending. There's a character that appears, and I really found that awesome the way that they did that. But yeah, the characters in this are just really well done, and I really liked what they did here with them. Cal is great, Seer and all of them. They feel like this team, but overall, like, at first it was just a thing that you kind of have to get used to them, and it takes some time. But I did overall really like them once they did set that up, and I really cared. But yeah, and the story itself I found very interesting. There is something that happens at the end which I was a little bit annoyed by, but overall, like, I did really like the story here, and I think that they did such an interesting job, and it was such a really well written game overall, and I think that the story did work. I think that it really was good, and that's really an important factor, and especially when it comes to Star Wars, because you have all these stories that are so interesting. If you didn't have an interesting story in Star Wars, it basically would ruin it, and it's not a game that just feels like set piece after set piece after set piece. It feels like there is a story there, and the set pieces come along with it, and I did really like that. The humor was a bit off and on at points. Like, there were some problems I had with it, but overall, I actually did really like the way that the humor was done. It just, at some characters, they kind of just felt like comedic relief, and that was a bit of a problem at first, but overall, then I started to get used to it, and I really found it funny at times. I thought the humor was really good, and the gameplay itself is really good. It's really strong, and that's probably one of the biggest aspects of this game is the gameplay, because because it really just kind of sets you up so that way you are this Jedi and you have experience in the past, and yeah, the way that they do it is really interesting here. The gameplay itself is just really well done, and it's a very well done system. Like a lot of the moves and all that, it does get a bit annoying at times, or at least for me, because it was really hard in some areas, especially towards the end. The final boss battle took me like over 2 hours to complete it, but I really, really liked what they did with the gameplay. I thought that was really interesting, and overall, I think that that was probably the strongest aspect of the game because it really was a lot of fun to just go around and like slice up these enemies. That was just really cool and a really fun thing to do, and it's probably one of the best systems in like any Star Wars game. And yeah, and I'm just glad to see that there are games like this that are single player, no microtransactions or anything like that, because I do really like single player games. I do prefer those. Now, if you do like multiplayer games, that's fine. It's just I prefer single player games because I prefer their stories and what they can get out of them, kind of like what stories from like books or or not games, but books and movies and all that have. I think that stories there can be really interesting. I think that games can also evolve those stories, and that's something that we're seeing a lot in games nowadays. Like one of my favorites is The Last of Us. That was a very narrative focused game, but I think it also that game also had a great combat system and all that, and I really liked it. But yeah, I really just like the gameplay overall in this. It has a very Uncharted and like Tomb Raider and Dark Souls feel to them, but I really liked what they did there with that, and I think that the systems that they used were really well done, and I overall really liked it. It was just a very fascinating gameplay system. It's got a very satisfying feel to it, but at the same time, it's a bit obnoxious to get to that. But I really, really liked what they did here with that, and I think that was a very interesting game the way that they did that, and I really liked all these characters and all of that and how they came together, and also how you can like interact with your ship. Photo mode is a really cool thing that they added in there, and apparently the orange lightsaber that was a pre-order bonus is appearing, which I did not pre-order the game. I picked it up like a month later, but I'm glad I'm able to get it now at least. Although I do feel bad for those who did pre-order it because they did pre-order and if was a thing where now apparently it is coming. Although I don't know if that's confirmed or not. I didn't check if it were confirmed. I would like to know now that I think about it. But yeah, there's a really cool thing that you can do with the lightsabers. It's just really interesting, and the systems and all the customization for it, it's really well done and it's very thorough and well detailed because there's a lot of customization in this game, which normally I think that this is kind of a play on what EA would do, where they would, with the customization, it would be like all microtransactions and loot boxes like in Battlefront 2, but here it does not have any of that and it's just no microtransactions and any of that, and that's really good to see. And it's very interesting that they did that because EA, I don't know how they did that, but I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they let something like this happen, and I have a feeling because of how successful it was, they're gonna hopefully continue something like this, although it's very unlikely because EA and their money, because they just need money, 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 and all of that, and yeah, but really this game is very important in the fact that it is single player and no microtransactions because that's not a thing that we see commonly anymore, and I think that's going to be a really heavily talked about aspect of this game. And yeah, because it has this discussion around it for whether or not it's like ethical or not to include loot boxes and all that, and it really isn't, in my opinion. I really think that is really stupid, and they do it a lot with like a bunch of other games, and I find it obnoxious as well because it's something that's scamming you. It's a scam and all that, and it's really really stupid that they did that with Battlefront 2. But I'm not gonna ramble on about that because that was a long time ago. But really, that it's just glad to see EA made a game that was polished and unbroken because that once again does not happen a lot. Now, well, okay, well, polished is a hard term to use for this game because in some ways it kind of isn't, which I will get into. But yeah, and overall, like visually, this game is just stunning to look at. It's a very beautiful looking game. The environments and all of that, they're really, well done, really well lit, and the combat and all of that, the way that it kind of interacts with the environment is just really beautiful. The settings, everything are beautiful to look at, like all the planets that you can visit, like Dathromir and all of that, they're very beautiful looking and have such like great cinematography and all of that to them. And I think that that was really interesting. And it was just overall like a really good game. And there's a lot like there are some problems which I will also get into involving like bugs and glitches and frame rates and all that, which yeah are very common in this game. But yeah, it's overall just a really well done game, and I think that it was worth the $60 because I did pay that for it, and I think that it was worth it in the end. There are like some problems with like popping and all that, which is another thing that appeared in there. But overall, I really did like the visuals and everything in there, and I'm glad that a game like this does exist. I'm glad that there are companies that are doing something like this because it is an important thing that most games try something like this. Otherwise, it's just going to become this common thing in the industry. Well, it already is, but like to see games go against that is really interesting. I think that that's something that needs to happen. It's something that needs to occur more often. And with Jedi Fallen Order, I think that is really great. And there's also some other really cool things like boss battles are really well done in here. They are very well done, except for the last one. I'm not going to spoil it, but that last boss battle was super annoying, and just the combat itself when it came to that was really poorly done because it did kind of show like a lot of the problems in the combat. But overall, I did really like it. I think that it did work really well. Just at the end, it does kind of show where its weaknesses are in that final boss battle. Not because I had a lot of trouble with it. I think that's more because of the amount of like repetition that occurs to it, and it gets really annoying because you can only do like so minimal damage, then you have to block so many times, and it got really annoying. But yeah, overall, it was a great gameplay system. Visuals in the game, like I mentioned before, are just downright stunning to look at. And all the planets, they have such an interesting like world to them. They have this interesting feel, and it's so well done and so well, like it just looks so good. And I think that that is really good that they did manage to do that. Bugs and frame rates, which I will get into now, are definitely there. They are this huge problem. Now I didn't play it at launch, so I didn't experience that many bugs or problems like that. But frame rates, I did notice a lot of dips in a lot of areas, and that really became annoying at some points. There's also like this thing where when you go to a certain point, it'll freeze you, and it'll just continue loading and loading and loading. That was really annoying too. Because there are sometimes where I was even in the like the middle of a fight, and it would do that, and I didn't like that. I really was kind of annoyed with it, but yeah, that was a bit of a problem. Frame rates, yeah, in some areas it definitely does drop. Although it seems like in some areas, like on some planets, it is very good. Like it works completely fine, and then in some other areas, it just dips so much, and it was really weird. But yeah, overall though, it didn't occur too many times. It wasn't too noticeable, or at least by my standards. It might have been still for some people, but really, it just overall, I think it did work really well. And I do think that this game was great. I think that Respawn did put a lot of really good time and effort into this, and I'm glad to see that this game does exist, because it is a thing, though, that's common in the industry with you've got your microtransactions, you've got your loot boxes, you've got your DLC, and to see a game like this is really important. I think that this is something that the industry has to take note of. And I'm not going to talk about that stuff too much. I just feel like that kind of idea just really connects into this game because it is such a very key factor of this game that really it is something that is needed to be taken note of from a lot of companies. And gameplay and all that, it all is satisfying. It all works really well. I like the gameplay in here because it does. I'm gonna say it makes you feel like a Jedi. Because IGN when they did their reviews of Spider-Man. So yeah, now it makes you feel like a Jedi, which Yeah, it does though, it does. And even then with that Spider-Man game, it did make you feel like Spider-Man. But it was just really funny in that review. But still, I really, really liked what they did here with the gameplay. It does make you feel like a Jedi. It does have a lot of stuff like that that was really well done. The maps are very huge and there's a lot to explore. Like, there's so much in this game, so many collectibles. It's insane. And the combat is really hard at times too. It's got a very hard combat system, or at least for me. For me, it was hard. I'm sure that a lot of people who have played like Bloodborne, the Dark Souls series, are probably used to it by now. They're kind of used to that. Sekiro apparently is very similar. I haven't played that game yet, but in terms of like its gameplay, apparently that is very similar to this one because of the parry system. So that is really interesting. There are these massive areas to explore. There's there's a little bit of clunkiness in the way that the gameplay was. Now I play on the base PS4, so the problems on there might be different than what's on the other systems. I don't know for sure, but yeah, there were some like technical problems. I think is the only real problem with this game, like, is the technical stuff. Like, the other stuff are more nitpicky gripes, but when you look at the technical issues in this game, it is kind of a problem. Now, I played it when there weren't so many. At launch, apparently, it was really bad, or at least for a lot of people, so didn't I didn't really experience anything that negative about it. So maybe now, because since I played it way later, it wasn't as bad. But really, like, overall, I do think that it was really, really well done of a game, and I think that there is a lot more to it that's just very interesting, and I really liked what Respawn and the fact that EA did publish it, I think is really, really important. Now, at first when I saw the gameplay for this, I thought it looked way too simple. Like, I was like, oh my god, this game looks so easy. And then I played it, I'm like, oh, the irony in that. There was a lot of irony in there, because it really was not as hard as I thought it would be. But yeah, because this game though is very difficult. But when I first saw the stuff where I'm like, oh, okay, it's gonna be really easy and it's not gonna be that hard, and I wasn't interested in it when I saw it. Although before that, when I had seen the trailers, I'm like, oh my god, this game looks so good, and I got so excited for it. And then I saw the gameplay, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look that good. But then, like, at one point, I'm just like, okay, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance. I did set myself up for higher expectations, which, yeah, I know isn't that good of a thing to do when it comes to games, but I think that with this, though, I felt like it was kind of important because it is Star Wars. It is something that I absolutely love, and I did set these expectations a little bit higher, even though I know typically that's not something you're supposed to do. But yeah, I did that, and overall, I felt like it was really good. I felt like it was a really good game, and I really liked a lot about it. And there are problems, of course, but overall, I think that they did such a really great job here, and it's just such a really important and interesting game. And I really liked what they did here with the story, the combat, and all that. I think it was really well done. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give this game, I I'm gonna say an 8.8 out of 10. I think that it is really, really well done. Just a lot of the technical problems and so the starting points for the characters were a bit of an issue. But overall, I did really like it. I really liked what this game did, and yeah, I just think that this game sends an important message to other games that I think that they should take note of. It's something that really it's polished in some areas and then it's polished in not. The gameplay and all of that is really well done. I really liked what they did here with it, and I think the characters, the story, and all of it, how it comes together, and all these set pieces are just so well done, and it's just such an interesting thing. And I think that it does have its setbacks, but overall, I think that it was really good. I think that they did such a great job here with it, and I think that this is something that I really hope that more games do. I think that, well, not in terms of like its polish and all that. I think that they should release in a more stable state. But I mean, like, in the way that like microtransactions and all that are handled, I think that more games should be like this. And I'm glad that this game was like that. Because yeah, there were technical setbacks, but overall, I think that they did a really great job here. And I think they made a really great game. the visuals and everything are just so well done, and it's such a beautiful looking game. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review, and I will have other videos planned in the future. I have two more that I am thinking about doing, which is the Outer Worlds review and my top 10 most anticipated games. So be prepared for that. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys later.